Vinny, you're live.
Hi!
Hey.
I am in a car. Guys, I'm with Alpert. We're driving back. Look at how much stuff we got. We got Legos. And guys, horrible news. And I hate to be the one to break it to all you guys and all of our fans. And Santa is not real.
What?
Come on, Manny.
Shut your worthless mouth, Vincent.
That man, I'm driving. I'm sorry.
Vinny Santa.
Are you driving, Brandon?
Yeah, I'm almost done.
You're a psycho. Kelly made me.
I did not.
Look at Viva. Viva, how was your Christmas?
Well, it's been very good. I've entered Commie Canada again, and I didn't bring enough clothing, so I had to go into the depth of the drawers, and I found an old Freiheit legal merch from the days of practice of law. It's beautiful. It's freezing cold.
But hey, possibly America soon.
51st state.
Humberto, Connor, how you guys feeling?
I'm feeling great.
Wonderful Christmas.
Did Santa give you everything that you wanted, even though he's not real?
Okay, first of all, this Santa denialism is unacceptable, especially coming from you, Vinny, because Santa was literally on PBD podcast yesterday.
I know.
I don't know what you're talking about, but
I know.
Drenching it up today.
You guys would have been so proud of me. I was at Disneyland and I was going up to kids that were being bad, and I got real close to them and I went, "Santa's not real," and I ran away.
They, you're a Grinch.
Hey, they have to know. You have to be naughty or nice. If you're not nice, then
This is how you know Vinny's been away from me for too long.
I know. Like a 4-year-old went up to me for no reason. I was like, "Hi, Merry Christmas," and he goes like this. And I'm like, I go, where are your parents? And I look, none of them had any teeth. I was like, oh, I get it.
It's like idiocy.
Well, Vinny, was there anything you'd like to say to our unusual suspects before you continue on your journey back to us?
You mean besides the fact that Santa's not real? Got it.
Vincent, stop
Well,
it.
I just want to say, before I do the Christmas wishes and the holidays, how much I appreciate every single one of you that have been there from day one, all the new people that are there. We are, we're all about, obviously we have PBD podcast, we have, the comedy channel, we have a bunch of stuff going on, but the unusual suspects, I believe that this channel has a lot of potential, and we love the fact that you guys are all supportive. Viva, Connor, Kelly, Brandon, Humberto, Amy, everybody that comes on our shows, to everybody, there's no words to show or to express my appreciation for every single one of you. I hope your Christmas was amazing. I hope your holiday season's amazing. And I hope 2025, because I don't know if we're going to see each other till the new year. Every single thing that you want, every dream, every aspiration, I want you to shoot for it. I hope that you get everything that you want. And I've said this before, this is the year of being undeniable. But I want this year, all those risks, all those chances that you're kind of contemplating that you didn't take in 2024, do them this year, because in the Bible, Humberto, you know this, Kelly, all you guys, what phrase is in the Bible 365 times?
do not be afraid.
Do not be afraid, guys. Take every chance, take every risk, and go for it. I hope you guys get everything that you want to. Love each other, be kind to each other, but shoot for the stars. And I think this year is going to be an amazing year for all of us. Come January 20th, it's on like Donkey Kong.
Woo!
Hell,
It is.
Did you say "do not be afraid" is in the Bible 365 times?
Isn't that
So
funny?
once for every day of the year.
Mhm.
That's what I'm talking
Yeah.
about, Viva. That's what I'm talking about. Every single
Funny how
day,
that works out.
do not be afraid. And obviously, the context of the Bible is don't be afraid, but I take it as don't be afraid in anything, since you already know if you're a good person and you're a good soul, paradise awaits. So when Patrick says the future looks bright, it has a double meaning for me. America, our country, and all that, and also our souls. If you're a good person, your soul's going to be good. So guess what? Roll the dice and take some chances this year.
Yes, sir.
Columbus did.
I love you guys. Humberto will probably go to diner tonight. Kelly, if you want to come. But guys, I love you. Kelly, if you want to come with us, we're gonna go eat at the dinner.
I'm doing a celebration tonight, but I'll see you this weekend.
Okay. Well, I love you guys to death.
Love you, Vinny.
Love you, Vinny.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Such
Okay.
beautiful green foliage behind Vinny, and I'm looking out the window. I can show everybody mildly what I'm looking at here. I'm looking at snow, cold, dreary. The sun hasn't come out. Oh, today. It came out yesterday.
Well, the sun will come out tomorrow, Viva. No.
It is
All right.
Canada.
So now that our fearless leader has continued on his journey, we're gonna have Viva start us off with his first segment. With the first segment.
Well, the first segment is we're talking about. Let me just up the screen here. We're talking about Judge Juan Marchand, the corrupt Judge Juan Marchand out of New York, and his recent ruling. It was last week. I must have missed it because of all of the news that was happening last week. Judge Marchand dismissed, or he dismissed Trump's motion to vacate the verdict in that New York hush money payment. You know, the hush money 34 count felony conviction coming out of the corrupt commie state of New York. And you recall it was the 34 felony conviction for the hush money bookkeeping issue, which in any realm of the universe would have only been a misdemeanor to begin with, which they then it would have been a misdemeanor that was time barred under the statute of limitations. They managed to find a way to extend the statute of limitations by converting it into a felony charge, by arguing that there was some underlying predicate felony that the concealment was attempting to hide. So they managed to convert it into a felony. They got a nice politically prejudiced jury to convict Trump on charges they probably couldn't even understand. And since that ruling came down, or since that verdict came down, the Supreme Court came out with its ruling on immunity. And the Supreme Court ruling on immunity was in the presidential immunity case, where they basically said, for the president, there's absolute immunity for core constitutional duties. There is no immunity for purely personal acts, and there's presumptive immunity for everything in between. You got to prove what is either purely personal or presidential in order to determine whether or not immunity applies. It wasn't just the immunity question that was relevant for the New York case, because in the SCOTUS ruling, they also said that evidence adduced from a presidential act would be invalid or, impermissible evidence, even if it were used to prove a purely personal act. And so in the Trump New York case, there was correspondence between with Hope Hicks, White House staff when Trump was president, which was, if you're not a totally corrupt communist judge, obviously prima facie presidential acts, or at least presidential correspondence communications. Thus, the evidence adduced of it during the New York trial was invalid. So Trump says, look, in light of the Supreme Court ruling, you've got to vacate the conviction, vacate the verdict, and basically start from scratch, because evidence that was adduced during this trial was prima facie on its face presidential communications, even if it was used to prove a purely private act, that being concealing the payment to Stormy Daniels and whatever. Okay. So the judge, it's a 41-page ruling. And in order to appreciate how insane you have to be to get to the conclusion that you want to get to, you got to start in reverse. And you got to say, Judge Juan Marchand, I'm going to go on a long rant here. And interrupt anytime, people. But
You good?
Parade.
okay. Whose daughter you may remember. Her name is Lauren Marchand. She's an executive president at Authentic HQ. The other partner at that firm is the guy who started White Dudes for Harris, or Dudes for Harris. I forget which one. She has been fundraising off of this persecution, literally for Adam Schiff, for Kamala Harris, for Democrats' political action committees. She, raking in money hand over fist off the prosecution that her father is spearheading. And so if you come to the conclusion that this corrupt judge needs to say the acts accused of Trump in the hush money case were purely private acts, and the evidence was somehow also purely private and thus admissible, but even if it wasn't, we still want to admit it, that's where the judge wants to go. And so in this 41-page ruling, the judge basically says, to get around the first question, the hush money payments were purely personal because they occurred before Trump was president, although the payments actually occurred when he was president. He says, look, it was purely personal because we all agree on it. We've stipulated among the parties, including Trump's team, they were purely personal acts to make those payments, even though they were made when Trump was president. Okay. How do you get around the fact that the evidence adduced was presidential communications with White House staff while he was president. Well, you say it was done in furtherance of a purely personal act, and therefore we get to admit that evidence because it was made in furtherance of a personal act, and therefore we get to deem it as purely personal. But, and it's the most amazing catch-all, Kelly, if you can bring up that highlight of the decision, the judge basically says it's purely personal, admissible, but even if it weren't, and it were in fact evidence adduced in violation of the Supreme Court ruling on immunity, it was harmless, sufficiently harmless in light of the overwhelming evidence of guilt of the defendant, Trump. And so this ruling is just the next stage of the judicial madness coming out of New York, where the judge basically finds a way to, oh, that's right. There was an issue of preservation of some of the objections as well. And the judge said, yeah, Trump properly preserved his objections to the admissibility of this evidence, except when it came to Michael Cohen. But even with Michael Cohen, even if he had properly preserved his objections, it would have been overturned anyhow because the evidence would have been valid. Let me see what it says here. It says, it's any mistake they made in allowing this evidence is harmless because the evidence was irrelevant, though adduced as evidence, and irrelevant in light of Trump's overwhelming guilt. And so the judge basically dismissed Trump's motion to to vacate the verdict, reaffirmed the conviction, so he can now delay sentencing for whenever. Potentially, they're going to have the sentencing, sentence Trump to whatever the sentence would be, and suspend that while he's president to impose it after he's president, which raises a next level element of corruption, which is exactly that Merchant can hold over Trump's presidency like a sword of Damocles to say, we'll sentence you to jail if you piss me off while you're president, so you better be a president that I like ideologically, or I'll send you to jail when you get out of being president in 4 years. So it's the utmost of judicial corruption coming out of New York State. Everyone should, pack up your shit and leave because the court systems don't work. And unless the Court of Appeal comes in here to overturn this ruling from Merchant, to overturn Engoron's ruling in the Letitia James persecution, you're dealing with a corrupt state where you know that you cannot confidently do business, live, exist without fearing, the political hammer that can come down because they don't like your ideology.
So I have a question, Viva. So what you say this is judicial corruption. Could the judge face any type of legal action or legal charges for conducting legal corruption like this, or judicial corruption?
Well, so that is the question, and judges can be impeached. The question is who's going to impeach them. In New York, it's a state level judge, and so who's going to do it? Is it going to be Hochul, who is very happy with this political persecution? So the bottom line is there is in theory some potential. You could have sanctions, you could have impeachment processes, but you have to have the political will to do it in the first place. You don't have that out of New York. I mean, take also the example out of Georgia, where you had the Court of Appeal reverse Judge, I think his name is Scott McAfee. Who's McAfee that did the virus? Whatever. Judge McAfee, the one who refused to disqualify Fannie. And so he basically came up with a totally incongruous decision, which had all the facts warranting removal and then refused to do it. He was running for re-election. He got re-elected. It worked out well for him. Fannie was running for re-election. She got re-elected. It worked out for her. Then the Court of Appeal comes in and says, yeah, your ruling was totally idiotic, and we overturn a part of it. That's pretty much where it stops, because you need to have the political will from the higher up at the state level to say we're going to go after sanction, file ethics complaints against these judges. Elise Stefanik out of New York has done that. I'm fairly certain she's done that against Engoron and Letitia James. I don't know if she's done anything against Judge Marchand, but you will not have the political will from the higher up who love this. They love this political persecution. They hate Trump. So they're not going to go sanction this judge anytime soon. So the short answer is it's possible, but it's not going to happen.
So it could only come from the state. It can't come from the federal level, like from the federal attorney general or from the Supreme Court or from appellate courts or anything?
You'd have to get creative and think about whether or not they can, make an accusation or bring charges for violation of civil rights. But I don't think you can do that until you have like someone determining that the process was abusive on its face. There might be a way to do it. You did have some had other states going after certain states for violating their allegedly violating their election rights. I think it was Texas filing something in New York. I forget the details of that, but. No, I mean, I don't know what you could do at the federal level that wouldn't involve bringing charges for violation of civil rights. It's a conspiracy to violate civil rights, which is what we've seen now in New York. So maybe someone creative does it. Or flip side, maybe the politics of the state change and you get an attorney general who's not a corrupt POS like Letitia James, or you get a governor who's not a corrupt POS like Hochul to go after these rogue corrupt judges.
Yeah. I remember one of the crazy things I heard with that was, correct me if I'm wrong, but that the judge let them convict him on one of the 34 counts instead of all of them convicting him on the same count, which normally it's the same charge that you have to convict somebody on. But did he give him the option to convict him on one out of all the 34 charges, and then like
No.
collectively is that wrong?
Well, not wrong. It's sort of. I think maybe if what you're trying to describe, it might be oversimplified or mischaracterized. The issue was the 34 charges. By the way, people don't understand this. It stems from the same payment. So it was the same payment spread out over months, and on a monthly basis, there were basically 4 felony charges: writing the check, entering the ledger, entering it in the book. So the same monthly payment for the one aggregate payment was broken down into 34 felonies because it was done month over month, and each month there were like 2 or 3 felony charges. But what you're thinking of, I think, is when they were going to convict on the felony charge, the issue was that in order for it to be a felony charge, it required a predicate act, which was what is the underlying felony? And there were one of 3 options. It could have been election interference. It could have been, I don't know, say fraudulent concealment. I forget what the 3 potential underlying felony predicate acts would have been. And the jury said, do we need to be unanimous on what the underlying predicate act is to turn this into a felony conviction? And the judge said, no, you do not need to unanimously agree on what the underlying felonious predicate act was in order to convict, which is just basically saying, we're convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that he's guilty, except we don't know which predicate felony act we can agree upon underpinned this felony conviction. But the judge said, don't worry about it. You don't need to agree on that. So it's a mockery of justice, period, full stop.
And that right there is reason not only to go after the judge, if such a thing is possible, but also to go after guys like Alvin Bragg and Letitia James, these corrupt prosecutors who brought these charges in the first place. Because, like you just laid out, it should have been 1 charge at most. They found loopholes that let them split it into 34 individual counts, because going after Trump for 34 felonies sounds better than going after him for 1. So that's why they did it. It's corrupt from the top down, and somebody needs to be held accountable for it.
Worse than that, it would have been 1 charge of a misdemeanor, which would have been a fine, and nobody's ever been prosecuted for it, basically. And then they turned it before felony charge. And the issue is also Bragg didn't want to bring this case in the first place, but you had some puppeteering from the Biden Department of Justice Biden regime to bring these charges. And after 2 people left Bragg's office because they were so pissed he wouldn't bring the charges, a couple of years later they decided to bring it in what they called a novel legal theory, which is another word for judicial bullshit. I mean, it's nothing but like you say, Connor, I mean, that was the purpose of this. It was get your politically active or your political activist judges, rig the entire system, rig it like they tried to rig with Daniel Penny. Remember, like they said, we're hung on the major charge, so dismiss it, but don't tell the jury it's tantamount to an acquittal, because then they might acquit on the lesser charge, and just hope, cross your fingers, you get a conviction on the lesser charge. It's pure judicial corruption from top to bottom. But who's going to do it? Will there be a way to have the federal government say there was some RICO conspiracy to violate civil rights here? Then you got to prove it. But at the end of the day, it's going to be political blowback at the very least, because this will continue to bankrupt New York State as a state where I wouldn't even drive through, let alone, if I'm a Kevin O'Leary type, invest in that state, where if they decide from one day to the next they don't like you, they can literally put their finger on your business and snuff you out of existence.
Damn. Yeah, it sounds pretty dirty. I mean, just the fact that his daughter is raising money, I would think that would remove any notion of impartiality to begin with.
His daughter was on a podcast in 2019 talking about how she was having discussions with her dad about how he hated politicians who tweet. Not even a vague reference to Trump. It's pure corruption. Trump moved to have. So I think he moved to have the judge removed. I might be mistaken in the cases here, but it's corruption. Yeah, I'm fairly certain that he found a way to say, no, I'm totally objective in this case. My daughter is raising money off of this, sending out emails with Adam Schiff. I think he raised I would say $20 million off of this, give or take. Raising money for
a lot of money.
If anyone can fact check, they were raising millions hand over fist, and by sending out emails directly referencing the case that her daddy is spearheading in New York. And yet somehow, I mean, it's like, justice is blind in terms of like it's got its fingers in its ears, and the judge says, yeah, no, that's not enough of a conflict. I mean, it's an appearance of a conflict. Forget whether or not it's a real conflict. It's an appearance on its face that you have a family of corruption, financially, politically invested in the persecution of a former president, now current president, and the freaking judge doesn't have the political wherewithal to just vacate the verdict and blame it on the Supreme Court. Instead, backflips to say, yeah, the evidence was fine, and even if it wasn't, it's no big deal because he was overwhelmingly guilty. This is communism.
Well, there's a reason it's all happening in New York, too, where Democrat control and political corruption have existed side by side for decades and decades. This couldn't really happen in any other state. I mean, we saw the whole case in Georgia with Fani Willis, and that was a whole separate thing. But on a minor note, I don't know if we ever covered, she did get kicked off that case, which is, great. Not that the case was really going to hold water anymore because Trump's on his way back to the White House. But when we have people like Letitia James in New York who gets elected making a promise that she's going to go after Trump, it basically amounts to I forget which Soviet leader it was who said, show me the man, I'll show you the crime.
That was Lavrentia Baria.
Yes. She said the same thing. She said she was going into office just to bring charges against Trump, whatever they might be. Yep. And eventually she had to settle on the civil case, which they are still trying to continue because technically it's a civil case and there's no precedent for getting rid of civil cases against presidents. But it's just so corrupt. You'd assume anybody on the outside would be able to recognize this. But to this day, there are still Democrats who walk around saying, Trump's a multiple-time convicted felon and he's a fraudster, all that fraud he committed where the victim showed up to testify on his behalf saying there was no fraud, was saying he's a rapist, even though he was never actually convicted of rape. And
the lady was crazy.
Yeah, you would assume
the Mouse House lady.
Rational people would eventually be able to realize, okay, this whole thing is like a corrupt rig system, right? No such
and Connor, let's not give New York the whole credit. I don't know if you guys read the story. $24 billion missing from the homeless fund in California.
Oh yeah,
yep,
sure is.
Nothing to show for it. Nothing. Absolutely. And no, listen, it got worse since they started getting that money. This is absolutely crazy, and they keep on voting for these people. So I don't even know.
It is you have to highlight something, and Connor mentioned it. What's her face? Letitia James campaigned off prosecuting Trump personally. What's her face? Fani Willis campaigned off prosecuting Trump personally. And you say in certain states this works better than others. Yeah, Illinois, New York, California, Michigan, it works. Georgia, it worked a little less. And by the way, in that case, Fani Willis's entire office was disqualified because the Georgia Court of Appeals came in and said nothing in what Scott McAfee crafted by way of decision resolved the appearance of conflict that he actually recognized. The only solution in this rare case is yeeting her from the entire case. They didn't dismiss the indictment, but they effectively did because now it's an indictment without a prosecuting office, and I don't think anybody's going to rush to pick up that big steaming pile of crap. But yeah, this only works in states, cultures where the corruption has been normalized, and it tends to be blue states where this is it's been normalized. And I don't think that they don't realize it, Connor. I think that they understand it. They just like it because for now they're the ones holding the bat, not realizing that at some point in time there will be a political shift, and they could very well be the victims of the same type of treatment that they're inflicting on others.
And here's the worst part about it too, is that very often when we talk about these things, there need to be repercussions for these people. We need to go after corrupt prosecutors, Soros-backed DAs, people who are actively making things worse, engaging in corruption and targeting their political enemies. You hear within the right wing, even within the Trump base of, no, we can't do that. That sets dangerous precedent. We can't target the corrupt people. We can't do these big sweeping overhauls and investigations because well, imagine if the shoe was on the other foot of, if Democrats were doing that, that would be bad. Yeah, I agree. If Democrats were doing it, it would be bad because they have proven time and time again that their motivations are bad. But it's not bad to investigate corrupt government officials. The problem was not that they were investigating Trump for all these crimes. The problem is that he didn't do any of them. Had he committed these felony crimes and sexual assaults and fraud, great, go after him. It's good to target corrupt politicians and people who take advantage of others. But they made the entire thing up. And that's why there's the problem. So it's not bad when we do it because, or at least you'd hope, it's based on something solid, not just complete fabrication.
No, you compare the. Oh, sorry, go for it.
No, I was just gonna say, is there anything they could do with this? Does this have any teeth or momentum or anything at all? Because I've heard people like asking the question, could they try to put Trump in jail while he's president? Like, is there a level of seriousness around this?
No, first of all, I mean, whatever sentence whatever sentence the corrupt merchant is going to give him, it has to be suspended at the very least until he's no longer president. You can't lock up the president while he's president. And whether or not it's going to be like a slap on the wrist, a probation or whatever, but it's going to get. I mean, it has to get overturned and appealed. It just has to, because if it doesn't, it's going to cause irreparable harm, much in the same way the Engeron decision is going to cause irreparable harm in New York. So it's going to work its way up to the Court of Appeals, and they're going to get it right. They have to, and if they don't, there's still Supreme Court questions at issue here. But I mean, but the bottom line is the merchants of the world have been totally empowered to run amok. And Connor, when you say like everyone says, well, the right shouldn't do it. I think it was Kash Patel who, he said it will be justice, not vengeance. And there's a big fat difference. When you have egregious corruption, it needs to be dealt with. When you have legitimate accusations, or at least plausible accusations of sexual impropriety, they investigate it. Plausible would be Tara Reid, whose accusations against Joe Biden are in fact corroborated by Lisa Bloom, Gloria Allred's daughter, in real time. The tweet is still there that says, yeah, we know that Biden had touchy hands and we believed you. You weren't asking for anything. Not plausible is batshit crazy E. Jean Carroll concocting a hallucination from 35 years ago and then extending the window of opportunity to sue for that by modifying the law for 1 year so that E. Jean Carroll can be the first one to get her lawsuit in after she and her lawyer petitioned to have the law changed so they can get an equally corrupt jury of Trump's peers to convict or to find liability, and an equally corrupt Judge Kaplan, who, despite the verdict, jury saying he did not rape E. Jean Carroll, we determine that the judge adjudicates him as a rapist nonetheless. I mean, justice is different than vengeance, and we need to see a whole hell of a lot of justice in 2025.
Amen.
Okay. I'm gonna go to Connor now for your story. You ready, Connor?
All right. So if you guys were paying attention, you may have noticed that there was a war that broke out on the right over Christmas break. We are now battling the rise of the Ron Deep state. Tech bros like Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy. So if we can go to this first slide here, I'll walk us through a brief timeline of events. This seems to have kind of kicked off on Sunday when Trump nominated venture capitalist Suraram Krishnan, I believe is how his name is pronounced, as his advisor on AI policy. This did not sit well with certain factions of the MAGA base, particularly Laura Loomer, who spoke out aggressively against his nomination. And we don't talk about Laura Loomer very much. There's a lot of mixed opinions on her, even within our group of some people think she has interesting points. Other people think she's nuts. But there did seem to be a very strong and immediate pushback against her, where it looks like she lost her verification badge, lost her ability to have subscribers on her X account, and had a bunch of other top-down consequences right now.
12 hours of locked out
yeah.
account or something? Right?
Yeah. Lost followers, lost basically the ability to be monetized on X. And it seems like that came from the highest levels because she was running up against Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and various other people who are now not only high-ranking in the tech and business world, but also influential in the government, the incoming Trump administration.
That's what she says.
That's what she says, of course. And this is allegedly, but there have been people looking into it, and it seems like it did happen at that time. It's just unclear of where that came from. And of course, as I mentioned, it's Laura Loomer, so make of the allegation whatever you will. But what it did is ignite this massive debate over the H-1B visa system that has really divided the right. That everyone was very unified behind Trump, and there was a lot of momentum there. And this one issue seems to have kind of started to expose some cracks. So if we can go to this first picture, so this is the guy who was nominated to the position. He, of course, is very much in favor of the H-1B visa system. He's a longtime advocate for immigration reforms that emphasizes merit and aims to streamline the green card process for skilled workers from countries like India. Remember what I just read. Skilled workers from countries like India. That has become kind of the main focal point of this problem here. So if we can go to these tweets from Elon Musk, he was the first one to weigh in on it. And I'm sorry, go to the next one. Okay, here we go. We need more like double that number yesterday. The number of people who are super talented engineers and super motivated in the USA are far too low. Think of this like a pro sports team. If you want your team to win the championship, you need to recruit top talent wherever they may be. That enables the whole team to win. Elon compared the country to a sports team, and basically this whole thing is about recruiting top-tier, high performers who are intelligent, skilled engineers and other technical industries from other countries to come here and work for us. That didn't go over too well with a lot of the nationalist base of the MAGA movement and conservatives in general. But then it got a little bit worse when Vivek Ramaswamy weighed in the next day. And this was, I believe, on Thursday, right after Christmas. 2 slides over. Sorry. Well, yeah, there we go. So this is a very long post, but it's worth looking into a little bit because he's making the same argument that Musk was about the need for the United States to recruit top performing immigrants to come be involved in our tech sector. Quoting from Vivek, the reason top tech companies often hire foreign-born and first-generation engineers over, quote, native Americans isn't because of an innate American IQ deficit, a lazy and wrong explanation. A key part of it comes down to the C word, culture. Tough questions demand tough answers, and if we're really serious about fixing the problem, we have to confront the truth. Our American culture has venerated mediocrity over excellence for way too long, at least since the 90s and likely longer. That doesn't start in college, it starts young. He goes on to explain that part of the problem is that Americans spend too much time venerating characters from Boy Meets World and Saved by the Bell, and they prefer the cool guys over Urkel from Family Matters. There's too much time spent, quote, chilling at the mall, fewer Saturday morning cartoons, more math tutoring, fewer sleepovers, more weekend science competitions, more books, less TV. And he's basically saying that because other cultures around the world emphasize performance and achievement more so than the United States does, we now have a huge deficit of talented people we need to recruit from abroad. And before I continue, let's get your thoughts on that sentiment alone right there.
All right, shut that. I got.
I beat you to it.
What do you mean you beat me to it? I'm an immigrant here, so I get to speak first, Brandon.
All right,
Huh?
now you decide.
I picked you, Brandon. You're up. Go.
All right, thank you. So
Jeez, this is so racist.
it's not you racist. Not gonna hear the point I make. I'm gonna be on the side of the immigrants here. So, listen. So, in India, 34% of Indian students major in STEM. In America, 16% of students major in STEM. And Indian parents are objectively better parents than American parents on average. Because we did an episode about this last year. Indian parents spend a ton of time trying to train their kids in things that matter. They're very intentional at what they do, how they set up their life. They study a ton. They limit meaningless things like, video games and TV. So they do a better job at preparing for life and things like this, basically. And, I don't want to hear from people who are complaining about this being like a form of immigrants taking our jobs. Like, we've had 20 million immigrants just come here to be a straight up leech to society over the last 4 years. This program, it's less than 1 million people. Oftentimes it's really smart, talented people. And yes, there is a situation where they hire these people to pay them less. Like they post jobs that are low level jobs on paper, but then they end up having them do like high level tasks. So that's something that needs to be addressed. But the main question is the bigger incentive for these companies to save money by underpaying these people, or is it to get the best talent? Because I think both things are happening at the same time. I think that there is a shortage of STEM talent in America, but also they are using loopholes to underpay these people.
Humberto.
Pro immigrant.
Compelling and rich, Brandon. Look,
Thank you.
I think both sides of the argument are wrong. Like, first of all, I will never side with the nerds because this system is I don't like nerds, and they've been running amok, doing nerdy things and being tech bros and wearing sweater vest, and I can't stand nerds. I will never side with the nerds, and maybe he's right. I side with the cool kids. All right, this is what happens. Like the way the H-1B visa works is so heavily, it's very heavy-handed on hiring nerds and finding nerds and bringing nerds to America. There's a bunch of for example, if I wanna only big companies they have the means to afford an H-1B visa. But for example, as an American, if I want to set a pizza place, okay, and I want to bring the top pizza guy from Italy. Okay, I want to bring him to America to have the best pizzeria possible. There's no way as an American for me to bring the best pizza chef to my business. So all these H-1B visas, they're very heavy-handed to people that are great in the STEM fields, mostly Southeast Asia, mostly Asia in general. But for all other fields of society, like the arts, music, the other thing is there's a shortage of skilled workers, actual skilled workers, plumbers. We don't have any plumbers. Electricians, we don't have any skilled electricians. He is right about the STEM here being a little slower. Like for example, I was middle of the pack in math and STEM, and science back in Dubai or back in Chile. And as I work with people, I can tell that my math skills are way above the American average, and I thought I was middle of the pack. Now, what I propose here, and this is why they're both wrong, because we can't let everyone in, and we can't just let nerds in. What I propose, what I propose is what they do in the UAE. I think they have the best immigration system in the planet. Basically, a citizen will sponsor you to come. All right. So if I want to have the best pizza chef at my restaurant, I go okay, this is the best pizza chef. I'm gonna sponsor him here. He's my responsibility. If he gets in trouble, I get in trouble. He needs to have a job. He needs to have Social Security from my pocket. And the only thing that the government there does is they check him for STDs and other ailments that they want to bring in, and they check his criminal record. So if he passes the criminal.
Isn't that what companies already do with this? Isn't that what companies do? They hire you in order to get the status. You're hired by that company, and they're responsible for you in that sort of way. Or you're saying a specific person, like a foreign exchange student from high school or college.
The thing is not at all. Like the government is very heavily involved in who comes in. They have a cap. They have special fields that benefits tech bros and engineering companies that can come in. Like for someone that is in the creative arts to come here, there's a few visas for performers and extraordinary people that are very hard to get. But I think a sponsorship system will work the best. We need to get the government out of this thing. And if I need 10 electricians and I can't find 10 electricians, I just sponsor 10 electricians, the best possible talent that we can get. And then if they stop working, they kick them out. In the UAE, you don't see a single person on the street. There's no crime because everyone is accounted for by a citizen. That's my take on it.
So, can someone please explain to me what the argument is actually over? Like, is Laura Loomer saying no more H-1B visas, and
Yes.
Trump is saying
Yes.
H-1B visas?
No, Trump is not playing that. Oh, I actually I want to get to that. If you can go a few slides ahead to Trump's quote from 2016, where he okay, well, I'll mention these just while they're up. This is a lot of the responses from the more MAGA-based right-wing commentators who are all very much against further H-1B expansion. And the crux of their argument is basically tech bros like Elon and Vivek have always made their profits by importing the people who are willing to work the longest hours for the least amount of money. So they're really not bringing in high performers. They're lying about the high performing thing.
I don't know if
Are they? I don't think they are.
Yeah, because there's a lot, like, there's a real deficit in America of people that can do that stuff at a high, like 16% of graduates in America can do that job. 34% of graduates in India can do that job. So obviously there's going to be more competitive
Yes.
with Indian people doing that. And
Well,
that's
but is
a
that
small
not
number.
is that not then the logic, or at least this is the argument against it, of if your education system is failing you to the point where you cannot produce people who are functional in STEM and not able to perform at these
We
levels.
have people in STEM. We're increased over the past 10 years,
Exactly.
like
So
34%.
if we're teaching our own people, the preference should go to your own people.
Yeah, but
Our children, our education system is churning out idiots who can't do basic arithmetic.
and that's on the
Fix
parents.
that
though, like,
instead of importing 1 trillion Indians to go fix it for you.
But that's the culture thing, though. Like the fact that we have the majority of our kids majoring in shit like liberal arts and gender studies, while India's like, no, the world needs STEM. We're going to major in STEM. I think that's the situation. And like, that falls on the parents, that falls on the culture. And there's no shortage. Like, there's not a big group of people who are unemployed that have STEM degrees in America. It's like, I looked up yesterday, like 2% of all people with STEM degrees don't have a job. So that's like, compared to the national average of all industries, that's minuscule. So it's not like there's a bunch of people who have STEM degrees that are trying to get jobs that are American citizens.
I do. I definitely think we got to do an episode on STEM, but I don't shit on liberal arts either. But that's the thing. The American dream lets you pursue whatever you want. My parents, believe me, I had to get straight A's in school. I actually am in the I don't know what they call it, but I'm super high up. I could do math, I could do science, I could do all of that. I was a very good student. I was a straight A student. But my dream was to, be a writer, be a teacher, blah, blah, blah. So I went to a liberal arts college and now I ended up in media because of that. So America and the culture that we have here lets you pursue your dream. And not everybody's dream is to learn numbers and science and that, because that's more long-term goals. Everybody's kind of worried about their day-to-day stuff, and it depends on your environment and your situation as well. So I think Vivek is right. I don't think it's the only reason, but I think he's right in saying that it's a culture problem. And I don't see it. Go ahead.
Okay, just because the argument is, when it comes to Laura Loomer, she could be crazy and right, and two things can be true at the same time on specific issues. I've just noticed she tends to pick fights with RFK, Elon Musk, and pick fights in a way that's not productive to anybody, but especially her. That being said,
I've read some of her tweets. They're not polite.
Well, and that's the other thing. It's like when someone says I've been demotivated, deranked, or had my blue check mark removed for attacking, you got to see some replies to know what might have been the actual reason. But I still think I'm inclined to think nobody should have their blue check mark removed because they said something spicy on Twitter. But the argument is it's either one of two things. Elon and Vivek are saying we can't find the skilled labor here. We need to import it. Others are saying it's purely pretextual. You're only importing it because you can import it for cheaper than you would otherwise have to, pay for it here. But the thing is this: if you actually can't find the skilled labor in America, you're not going to import your way out of that problem. And so, if that's true that they can't find the skilled labor here, then you have to have a two-pronged approach. One of which is to meet the immediate needs, and then the other one is to cure the longer-term problem of the American education system, which is not turning out the talent. I'm inclined to believe that Elon and Vivek, I think they have a better understanding of their business than the rest of us. That doesn't mean that they can't be motivated by the bottom line, which is they know what their business needs, but they also know what's cheaper for their business, versus other people who don't necessarily know how it works. But if it's true that you can't find the skilled labor here, you got to fix that. I would think that in a country of 350 million people, for the type of skilled labor they purport to need, you'd be able to find it. The other issue is people are pulling up examples of people getting H-1B visas for dog training. For things that quite clearly, I don't know if they're accurate means or they're accurate grasp, but they're giving H-1B not for highly specialty, like World War II level German, Russian scientist level understandings of nuclear physics, but just things that you can exploit foreigners in a way that you can't exploit local Americans. And so
it's exploiting Indians in the tech sector in the exact same way that Mexicans are exploited by agriculture. Why would you pay?
Why would you pay? There's a much rare.
Yeah. Why pay white people a living wage to go harvest crops when you can get a guy fresh across the border from Mexico to do it for pennies? Why pay a white guy to work in the tech sector and, educate him and fix the education system when you can just fly in a guy from India to do it yourself?
Here's the thing.
This idea that India is somehow sitting on this latent population of brilliant world-changing engineers, it's not really accurate, given that that's how look at how India is right now. That is not a population of high-performing people.
It's not the
No, but it's a
only
1.7 billion population.
Yes. So,
Right,
so whether you're bringing them in for votes like the Democrats do with South American immigrants, or you're flying them in from India to work in the tech sector, how is that any different? What the tech industry is talking about.
comparable. The people that are coming in illegally over the border and the people that we're doing with H-1B visas is not the same number at all. I don't know what the exact. It's America first, not America only.
Yeah, but
It's
you
700,000 for these
America
people.
first fix the American problem.
So
Look, chime in. One distinction also that people really have to bear in mind is the H-1B visas are non-immigrant visas. When they're over, they go back. So it's not an illegal immigration issue, and it's certainly not what people are portraying it as, a replacement issue. In the actual great replacement sense of it, people say, yeah, it's a temporary exploitation. And, I've made the analogy, it's similar to the illegals coming over and they exploit them for farm work. Here, the salaries are pretty decent. I mean, they might be commensurately less than what they'd have to pay an American. But these are non-immigrant visas. When they're done, they're over and people go back. As opposed to illegal immigration and, the whole illegal use exploitation for farm.
I looked up too the average pay. The company with the most of these is Amazon. It said the average wage for them is 150,000. So, and then Indians are the highest earning ethnicity in America. So, I mean, I don't know if they're being underpaid. I don't know if those jobs just pay that much where that's still being underpaid. But I don't know. I don't see the numbers of massive underpayment of these people.
No, the issue is. But the issue is that you're looking at Amazon, not necessarily dog walker or a dog trainer. Sorry, things where they can easily. But the other thing is, whether or not people use them as a loophole to fast track immigration, to come on H-1B one, and then we'll find a way to get you for permanent residence. But the bottom line, not the hypocrisy, but what the left is loving out of all of this is that the right went from, we're okay with, or at least not the right, I should say, some voices on Twitter, we're okay with immigration so long as it's legal, skilled labor that will better American society. And then overnight, we don't even want that, at least from some people. It's an incongruous statement, or at least a radical shift in the position. This is not immigration. This is skilled labor, in theory. As to whether or not it's being exploited or abused, it probably is. And then the issue is tamp down on the issuance of H-1B1, not do away with it altogether, and also train your freaking local population and your local citizens, enhance university productivity or products, and don't have people going and getting degrees in religious studies when what we might need as a society is to bring back or at least enhance skilled labor.
But the thing that puts part of the problem is that
Final thoughts, Connor.
specifically with countries like India and China and other Asian countries that are high performance STEM oriented cultures, what they are pushing for is to bring in uncapped levels. They keep talking about how, because the H-1B1 visas have caps on how many people can come from any particular country and in no time. They keep pushing for removing the caps on these very performance-oriented countries. And it's specifically different groups of Asians, because it's the stereotype of the Chinese family that's, making their daughter stay up till 2:00 in the morning to study violin and learn to be a doctor, all in one go, while the American neighbors across the street are playing video games.
That's the people that make America better.
Created. So the investment in America should be, okay, if we have a need for these things, let's cultivate it. But things like DEI-based college admissions actually drive out high performers in the name of diversity and equity, where Okay, we'll bring in a bunch of people with terrible GPAs because we need more racial
Yep.
diversity in school, and anyone who has like valedictorian gets turned away from the top university, even if they want to be an engineer. So that's the kind of problem we fix at home, and it's not solved by bringing in an uncapped number of people from completely different countries to try to fix our problems for us. Because even if it's only temporary, there's no incentive to fix it as long as that solution is available. If you can do it for cheaper, what's the point?
This is what capitalism is, though. If there's somebody else that's challenging you for that, how is America gonna rise up to meet the standards if they're not challenged and they don't have this? I don't want to call it a threat, but like if they don't have this challenger of these of foreigners that might be better in STEM or smarter or whatever, if we don't have that challenger and we're not pushed and they're not motivated to do better to meet those standards, then there's no impetus and everything just stays status quo. So
why fix it if you could just buy them? What's the incentive to improve? But you just have enough money in the bank to buy them and bring them here.
I think you're generalizing it too much.
There's this idea that is often pushed by people on the right, and you hear these two lies, or I consider them lies, frequently repeated, that America is not a country, it's an idea, and America is a nation of immigrants. Neither of those things is really accurate. America is, there are concepts that motivated our country, but it at the very least has to be a country. It means something to be an American. That's not just, oh, I like making money and I stepped on the magic dirt that immediately made me an American. So a national identity actually means something. And if you begin replacing the people who make up that identity with other people from other cultures and other countries, it's not a country anymore.
So some immigrants straight up deserve to be Americans more than Americans. Like, I'll trade a lazy piece of shit American who is not ambitious for a hungry, ambitious immigrant any day. Like, there's so many Americans here who really don't deserve to be here. People who were born in America. I would deport the shit out of them all day, every day for somebody who's starving to succeed from another country. So, like, I don't like the nasty shit I'm seeing online of like, oh, I don't want to be surrounded by Indians. Like, if they're the best of the best, I don't give a shit. Like, if they're the best people from another country, they're the smartest, they're gonna make things better, then yeah, all day, every day. What we don't want is the leeches to society that are coming across the border to just extract from the system. So totally stupid to fixate on this. Like, fixate on getting rid of the 20 to 40 million illegals that are leeching off the system before we start talking about cutting off the system that brings high performers here.
Speaking of fixating, we need to move on to our next topic because we are super behind. So, Brandon, I think I messed up your title card, so I'm not gonna put it. But tell us about Greenland.
So, yeah, Trump has a wish list. I don't know if you guys saw the Amazon cart that they were posting. So his Christmas wish list is to regain control of the Panama Canal, to purchase Greenland, and to annex Canada. So all these exciting things that, I've thought about all these things before. Like, I look at the map, I see Greenland, it's like bigger than North and South America put together. And, you see Greenland slash Denmark on it. So I always said, why is Denmark just entitled to this? So turns out we offered to purchase Denmark like all the way back to the end of World War II when after Germany temporarily took over Denmark, but then Greenland, but then Denmark said no. But now it's getting to be a matter of national security because the ice caps and I guess like you couldn't really navigate through that water up there for a long time, but now the ice is melting, so Russia's able to move ships through those seas. So like they're becoming shipping routes, and that's like the perfect barrier between us and Russia. So Trump is starting to make the national security argument for that, and then Denmark comes out harshly against that. Same thing with Canada. Trump starts speaking about Canada being the 51st state, and then one of the prime ministers of Canada comes out, or not prime ministers, one of the premiers of Canada comes out and says, "Oh, Trump, don't start saying that because we could cut off energy from you." And then Trump says we should retake control of the Panama Canal because we sold it for $1 after we were the ones who built it, and then the Panamanian government started threatening us. So, guys, out of these three things, what do you think is the most logical? What do you think makes the most sense? And what do you think could happen the fastest? I want to start with Viva actually, because this one is close to home.
Yeah, my prediction is none of them are going to happen. That it's sort of talk intended to stimulate negotiations over tariffs. Canada's not becoming a 51st state, despite the fact that a great many Canadians would love it. And I would say
What
probably
percent?
everyone, I would say everyone everyone west of Ontario will love it. I think Quebec would, I mean, not only not love it, they would love it as an excuse to become their
To
own separate
secede.
country. Yeah,
Yeah.
they've tried to do it twice, and they would love it as a pretext of, basically, if we're gonna, and if America's gonna annex part of Canada, that at least Quebec can break off and become its own country. But it's not gonna happen. But what it is it's sort of tongue in cheek, attempting to maybe, lay the groundwork for something of a North American union, like sort of like you got the European Union. Why not have a North American Union with Mexico? I mean, you got NAFTA already, but Canada is a de facto 51st state, whether we like to admit it or not. The only time it's going to become a problem for the states is when Canada becomes a national security threat to America. Then it might not be. You're not going to annex it as a 51st state, but you're certainly going to treat it potentially more adversarially than you treat it now, because I think it can, and if not, has already become something of a national security threat to the states. But bottom line, it's not going to happen, but it is a funny joke, and it is sensitizing the world to creating something of a North American Union, much along the lines of the European Union that we're witnessing. But different, because the European Union is falling apart, and you wouldn't want to set that crap up over in North America.
Now, Brandon, what needs to happen is the Panama Canal. We need to take that by force. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember what happened with the Houthis. They were blocking trade routes. This can happen right in our doorstep. Like that route is so important for imports, exports, to apply the tariffs. Like, not having control of the Panama Canal makes the whole tariff plan useless, absolutely useless. I can't believe they gave up the Panama Canal. And this happened in Africa, South America, Southeast Asia. The Chinese go like, hey, this is not doing great. We can give you some money to fix this canal, and then they take over. So I think the Canada thing is silly. It's funny. The Greenland thing will be awesome. We have a history of buying territories. But the Panama Canal is the most important thing that Trump needs to do if he wants to apply tariffs. That's my take.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I think Panama Canal is most justified and most reasonable because, like, who said that they wanted Jimmy Carter to sell that for $1? I mean, I don't know, like, what kind of charity tour he was on, but we built the thing, we sold it for $1. I don't think it would take a whole lot of force to take it back. I don't even think force is needed. I think just maybe a nice deal where Panama benefits from it if we pay them like a couple of years total revenue of the Panama Canal. I think it generates like $3 billion a year. So, give them a quick $20 billion and, tell them we'll give them some security or something. We could work something out. Greenland, I think, what do you think Greenland's worth? $1 trillion?
I don't know. Let's find out.
It depends.
What's the Zillow estimate on the entire country of Greenland?
They offered $100 million on it after World War II. So
That feels disrespectful. That's entire country, $100 million.
in 1940 dollars, I know our stimulus was more than that.
But back then, it was nothing. Like, there wasn't any trade routes. There wasn't any suspicion of oil. Like, it was just a piece of crap land back then.
Yeah, and the ice wasn't melted yet.
On the Panama front, not only do I support fully retaking the Panama Canal, I support annexing everything between the U.S. and Panama on the way down.
Making it part of the U.S.?
Yeah, we talked about this a long time ago when there was some big issue between Trump, or not Trump, but Lopez Obrador back when he was in office, saying something about
Remember that.
Oh yeah, we'll build that effing wall.
Yeah, I made some post. I made a post on X. You can still find it if you follow me. But basically saying the annexation and pacification of the failed narco state of Mexico is the only war the United States should be fighting right now.
100%.
Because of cartel control, the massive importing of fentanyl, the alliance with China that is allowing drugs to flood across our border, the fact that they are mass importing people from other countries to then traffic through Mexico to cross our borders. Mexico is barely a country at this point. Its government is controlled by corrupt interests that are hostile to the United States. So you know what? Think about how much easier the southern border of America would be to enforce if it was the length of Panama, rather than spanning from California to Texas.
So what's
Why
south
would the
of
US
Mexico? You want to take all those countries that are south of Mexico too?
All of it. All of it.
So would that be Colombia,
Panama.
Venezuela?
No, because
Too far down.
you're going too
It
far.
went way too far down.
So like,
Get a
let's
map,
go over
Brandon.
the states and the Yucatan Peninsula and then Panama. And you know what? We just by blanket decree say, hey, guess what? All of you are now American citizens with the full rights and responsibilities. Your resources belong to us, but can be accessed by you because you are American citizens. Your businesses are now incorporated into our economy. And then we immediately begin drone striking cartel compounds, followed by a full land invasion. The Mexican president, who I believe is now currently Claudia Sheinbaum, becomes governor of the new territory until we sufficiently break it up according to congressional districts. And that's how we solve the border crisis.
That sounds
As far
kind of
as-
chaotic.
No, but it's really the only conflict we should be fighting. Is it any less chaotic than our constant Middle Eastern interventions that give us absolutely nothing? Where we bog ourselves down in permanent war. But as far as what's north, Canada, like we mentioned, basically already a state. Like, what does Canada do that we don't give them permission to do and help them accomplish? Greenland, honestly, the first time anybody heard a peep out of Greenland internationally in the last century was when they said, no, we're not for sale, when Trump offered to buy them the first time. So I definitely think Trump is not suggesting full invasions or, possible takeovers. It's more along the lines of, let's get everybody on the same page, some sort of North American Union alliance where we all work together on that. But it's nice to see at least the return of expansionist manifest destiny rhetoric. Once upon a time, it's what pushed us from east to west and said America's God-given right is to take the entire continent from sea to shining sea. Now I think we ought to take it from the Arctic to the Panama Canal. Manifest destiny goes to the south this time.
Do you know what the population of Greenland is?
Is it like
6?
10,000?
It's 58,000. I mean, not the 50,000. No, sorry, go for it.
Their GDP in 2021 was 3.2 billion.
Wow.
Not bad for a population that small, but
They get a $600 million subsidy from from Denmark. Sorry, I don't know why I said Australia.
Where much per year? Okay.
Well, no, the amazing thing is it's military and route utility or what's the word I'm looking for in terms of melting ice caps and whether or not we're going to have a trade route or a military route through the Arctic. That's more plausible. But yeah, I mean, what does Denmark do with it that they would not turn down the money for? What would be enough for it? 3-point-some odd billion GDP. I forget. What would you do in terms of business? Would you multiply that by 7 in order to determine its value?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's more possible.
Plus natural
Taking over the
resources.
but what does taking over the Panama Canal look like in reality? I mean, but for that being a military intervention, I don't know how you take over the Panama Canal.
Would you
Without
start with a
setting up.
bribe?
well, the
Big bribe.
provision of when Carter handed it over to Panama to control itself was that the United States always has reserved the right to come back and retake control of it if Panama ever fails to operate it as a neutral international waterway. Everyone recognized that it is so strategically important that it should be made available to everyone. Like it shouldn't just be one country taking control of this and leveraging everything else. So when Trump is talking about going back and re-exerting our control, it's legal according to the allowance we established under Carter, but also it's not driven by this desire of we need to control global trade. It is Panama is mismanaging it and allowing China to take complete control of it. And just recently, there was a big drought that kind of dried up a lot of the waterways. So there was a huge shipping bottleneck, and they jacked up the price of getting through the canal by like 300%. So mismanagement, because part of the problem with the drought is that the canal runs off the same water that is used to water the crops and give running drinking water to the people who live in the area, which seems like just a really bad way of conducting that. Like you have critical infrastructure that is also a major shipping lane. Like you need a little bit of a distinction there.
And like, why do you need a
And now
river
I'm-
where there's an ocean next to you? Like, I'm sure modern art engineering can fix that. Like, if it's not Panamanian engineering it.
And now on the question how we look in reality, I'm gonna channel my best Dick Cheney energy here, and this is how I will do it. I will find two opposing groups inside Panama. All right, found them both, arm them, start a war between the North Panama and South Panama, and then I will have a DMC kind of Korea situation, and then take over that little stretch of land, and then we get it back. That's what it is.
You know what's
Old
amazing?
school
And
neocon.
who's I never even realized the Panama Canal is fresh water. I thought it was salt water because it connects the two coasts. That's interesting. It's fresh water that's separated to preserve the natural fauna.
It's
and
a series of water locks because they also have to go up in elevation, where it's not just a straight trench they can sail through. They have to, go through the ledges and fills to raise them up, and that's why it was such a feat of engineering, because it's not just digging a hole, and that's why there's fresh water in the middle that also the local population relies on. So clearly, Panama is failing both international shipping and its own people. They're like, hey, sorry, we're out of water for your house and your food. We got to run another ship through to extract higher customs duties or whatever they charge there. So that really is it's one of these things where people make jokes about Trump having these ridiculous ideas like they did in 2016 or in his first term. But they're actually pretty solid when you get down to the core of it. He's not saying let's invade Panama and overthrow a sovereign country. It's the canal itself that we gave to them under the assumption that they would manage it properly, and we reserve the right to go back if it was not properly managed. Well, guess what? It's not being properly managed anymore, so it's time for us to go back, unless Panama straightens itself out and actually does their job.
I agree with Viva that I don't think any of these things are going to happen, maybe not in the next 4 years, but I think it harkens back to my point earlier from Connor's segment that, again, if that threat, if that like, hey, like I told you these are the rules, isn't there to like make them step up, then they're just going to keep doing what they've always been doing. And
I love the spirit though.
speaking of next topic, because we were running out of so much time.
Ellie's here to crack the whip on us today.
I'm sorry. It's weird for me to be doing this and then also cracking the whip. It feels weird, especially when it's my story, which is very tragic and very sad and full of questions. So I don't know how many of you heard about this. I think we briefly spoke about it last night in the group chat, but the Azerbaijan Airlines crash on Christmas Day, very, very sad. This is a picture of the plane in half on the ground, obviously, as evidence collection and rescue is on the way. But so this happened on Christmas Day. Over half of the plane survived. So there are about 72 people on the flight. 38 of them died. I think 32 more were rescued. And it was really, really very scary. I want to show you this video, and I don't know if it's going to work, but we're going to try. See, I think it's just a slide. So maybe I will find another way to show you that video. But basically, from what I could read, and a lot of it's unknown right now, but from what I could read, it was a flight from Baku to Grozny, and they attempted to land 2 times in Grozny and were unable to do so. At some point, there are reports that there was an explosion outside of the plane, and the plane was hit by something. And that's what started. So the gas mask, I'm going to show you guys all of these videos. The gas masks fell down. There are holes in the plane, which doesn't make sense if it was a technical malfunction. So then, upon a third, attempt after the plane's been hit, on a third attempt to land, it's forced, because it's been hit, it's been forced to crash, and it crashed in Kazakhstan. Now, the plane was miles off course. There were some things that I did a lot of research on last night, like super rabbit hole. So I don't know what's real and what's not at this point, but it's for sure the plane was off course. And it seems to be because there was really bad weather, and they were, hundreds of miles off course though, so it was weird. And then there's this story that because they were flying over Russia and Russia had the drone strike from Ukraine, that they're like super hyper aware of they had an emergency, and they had the closest airport that sorry guys, I'm trying my best here. The closest airport in Russia to the plane at that time was closed because of the airstrike emergency from Ukraine. So it's curious as to why they were going that way, and so people say that Russia's anti-aircraft defense system shot it down. Russia is vehemently denying this, that's saying that it's not true, and that, until a thorough investigation has been completed, not to spread rumors. Kind of seems from the evidence that it is true, based on the damage to the plane, and how could that have happened otherwise? So I want to try to show you guys some of these videos, but I'm gonna need a second to pull that up. So if you guys want to talk about your initial reactions to this horrible tragedy, and by the way, viewer discretion advised. I mean, not that you could see anything bad, but you do one of the videos I have, the plane does explode. So, it made me very emotional and sad last night. I know I'm a girl, haha, but, it's really, hard to watch for me, so just viewer discretion for the videos we pull up later. But you guys, your first thoughts?
So just real quick, it left from where it got shot down over where, and where was it intended to go?
So it was flying from Baku to Grozny, and it was hundreds of miles off course because of bad weather. Supposedly, it's one of the most prominent theories that is out there on the internet right now, and they were flying over airspace in Russia where a lot of airports were closed because of a emergency from Ukraine missiles. So those airports were closed due to that emergency in Russia because they're afraid of more Ukraine drone attacks from drone attacks. So
I believe it was pushed out over the Caspian Sea is where it ended up because Grozny's in Chechnya, which is, Russian controlled.
Yep.
And there was heavy fog, is what they're saying. According to the main narrative right now, it was a bird strike. They got hit by a flock of
Wait
birds.
till I show you this. There's no way there's a freaking bird did
Birds,
it.
birds
No
can ground a plane, but they've never punched a hole in a fuselage. Like,
wait,
what's here?
okay. Keep going.
And they're saying that because of the heavy fog, they weren't able to land. They were then rerouted over the Caspian Sea, which put them right through the area where Ukraine has been launching strikes into Russian territory recently with, weapons that we paid for and gave them, but that's a whole other problem. So everything's been closed off. They got over Kazakhstan, and then suddenly the plane crashed. So they flew through airspace that Russia has closed.
Right.
And it's entirely possible that in the foggy conditions, the Russian air defense, which was already on high.
Man, they almost had a clean landing.
I know, that's what's so sad about it. Brandon, that's literally why I started crying last night, because I'm like, I mean, they're coming way too hot, first of all, but when they hit the ground, that's obviously when it explodes. It splits in half and it rolls. So you saw in the first photo that I had this, like, that's the end of the plane, and that's where everybody survived.
32 people in the tail section survived. A lot of them are
Really?
condition, but everyone seated towards the back seems to have been, obviously not unharmed, but that's where people made it out. Everyone towards the front.
Wow.
And you can tell, like, they still had control of the plane because it looked like they were trying to bring it in for.
Pilot must. I'm gonna take this off. I'm gonna do this. You in one of the videos, you can hear them like telling everybody to stay calm, blah blah blah, and
You know if they
like,
dumped the fuel?
almost made it, huh?
Do you know if they dumped the fuel?
I don't know. The black box has been recovered, but obviously because it's happened yesterday, or 2 days ago, I guess, depending on time zones. They haven't. A lot of details aren't out yet. It's just what we see on social media, and I've got more of that to show you as well. So there is this video that I wanted. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm just, it's the fog of war in that it's all the information's early, but it's wild that some outlets are reporting it was a flock of birds. Others are ostensibly blaming, I don't know, third parties. Others, where am I in here? Associated, Reuters is blaming, has concluded Russia down.
Yep.
I'm skeptical of the immediate reflex to blame Russia, which causes me to think it might have been third parties who might have thought it was Russian or something. The bird explanation is plausible, I guess, in a sense. It's happened before, but why it was so far off?
Let me show you.
The fact that it was so far off its intended line, and that could have confused.
Look right here. Look at the zoom in. A bird did not make that hole in the plane. You see that?
Wait, but how do they have video of the plane?
Because the plane was still flying. They got hit. All the gas masks in ground. And there's people in the front you could see standing.
No, but I mean, how did they recover the video after the crash?
Because these people survived in the back. This guy, I'm gonna show you this video right now. This guy filmed a video praying, and supposedly it was for his wife, but in this video I just hear him praying.
وأشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن لا الله أكبر الله.
And he keeps praying.
That was like me and Humberto the other day on our flight.
Oh my God. See all those people standing? So they're still in the air afterwards, right? And now this is him. This is the same man after the plane crashed. Pulling up the video. Here we go.
الله أكبر.
Imagine how lucky you feel.
Well,
Dude,
I love. Has everyone seen the movie Fearless with Bridges, Jeff Bridges?
No.
Oh,
No.
My goodness, you youngins, you have to go watch it. It's a classic. It's a great movie. But this is the randomness
bullet
of,
holes.
well, or shrapnel, like air defense. So what do they call it? The stuff that goes up and just. But who knows? Maybe when it rolls. But he said that guy prayed and he survived, and I'm sure there were people on the front of the plane who prayed and died, and one's gonna come away with the conclusion that some form of a god exists, and the ones in the front, come to a different conclusion. That definitely looks like anti-aircraft shrapnel.
Yeah.
So there's a video, which I don't think I have here, but there's a video inside the plane in the tail end where they're still in the air and they've been hit, and there's a hole in the plane. I think I have a photo of it. There's a hole, there's already a hole there. So they haven't crashed yet because I think some people were saying, oh, the crash could cause but this, and if you could see, it's in, right? It doesn't come out. So,
Right.
I'll play
is
this
true.
on silent, but this is some of the damage to the plane that was taken after it crashed. So I was curious, once you see this, what do you guys think?
I think either Russia did it or somebody who wanted to make it look like Russia did something.
Look, keep looking.
Yeah.
Is that normal after a crash?
No, those look like weapons.
I see big parts sheared off of it if it was just because of the crash, but
What's what I thought.
neural pitting like that, no, that's. And of course, I'm no expert on aircraft demolition and
I have a
anti-aircraft, but
I have a theory, but I don't want to say it on the show because I'm the only non-pilot from my family and watch the show. So whatever I say now is gonna be used against me. But the thing is, when you hit things fast enough, like anything could look like shrapnel. It could be like rocks when they hit the ground. It could be birds. If you find any videos, like some birds had devastating effects on planes. Like when you're going, like 800 miles.
Bird gonna do what you just saw.
I don't know. Like,
Yeah, I think they'd splatter instead of piercing a hole through steel.
That definitely. I mean, I'm trying to look up what type of anti-aircraft defense technology exists, but that, I mean, it looks like shards of metal sprayed up to try to take down something that's
Yeah.
flying. And
To
Um,
block.
and-
So apparently there was like a drone attack, and so that's why a lot of airports were closed, and that's why they were under emergency. And they apparently, allegedly, they shot this plane, with anti-aircraft for those. They thought it was gonna be like a drone attack.
Hell, maybe it was a drone that did something to it.
Yeah, it sounds like a drone because like it's the same size as a bird. It will like if you hit it, there will be shrapnel if it's big enough. So I don't-
Ukraine
I-
drone?
maybe they're flying.
Because it
So
could be
it's
Either
something.
Brandon.
Could be somebody trying to make it look like Russia did something to put turn the narrative against Russia or turn public sentiment against Russia, or it could be Russia's reacting quickly to try to defend its airspace.
It could be completely by accident if this was, it getting shot down, because it looks like because of weather, they got rerouted into what is
War zone.
become an active war zone now that Ukraine is launching strikes at Russia. And there's always the possibility that either side targeted what they thought was an enemy military plane, enemy drone, incoming missile, whatever, and accidentally hit a civilian aircraft. But there's no reason. It's hard to see the incentive to, if we target an Azerbaijani airline, we can convince Azerbaijan to get involved in the war. Like it doesn't look like some sort of false flag operation. It just sort of seems like if this was a deliberate thing, it was mistaken identity.
And because they got hit, like communications were down, which is why they had a hard time landing. Like the videos are.
That was the other thing. Their communication and navigation systems were jammed while they were, but that much we know already. There seemed to be some kind of interference on their systems as they were flying over. So clearly somebody was messing with them a little bit, at least.
Well,
If
so
it- if it-
confirmed that
it
that
were-
went out before while they were flying or before they got hit by whatever it was, bird, anti-aircraft, whatever. Because I read, again, super dark rabbit hole, but I read that the communications went out after they got the explosion outside of the plane. And this video is them trying to land like 2 times. They're circling, and then that's eventually when they crash. And I'm not sure what's happening. I don't know about the fuel dump. I just know that they can't really communicate. Yeah. It's really, really sad. It happened on Christmas Day. Half the plane died. I feel so bad for the pilot because I think like maybe you'll make it, when you try that kind of landing, but it's really scary. Anyway, I was gonna do something way cooler today. I was gonna do the Notre Dame fires and the discovery of the 2 bodies and like what they realized, who they realized that they were. But instead, Vinny was like, we got to talk about this and like the consequences of it. If it does turn out to be Russia, or if it is Ukraine's fault because it was one of their drones, like what is that? What does that change? Is that were you saying that it would, try to incentivize Azerbaijan to be involved in the war, or was that?
No, I'm saying quite the opposite. Like of all the people you might target with the false flag operation to try to get them involved in one side of the conflict or the other, Azerbaijan doesn't really seem like it's that high on the list. Like it's
So
it
it
is
was
in that area. Yeah. So I don't think this is from, or we're trying to frame, one actor or the other for blowing this up. I think, and you know what? It's entirely possible that we're reading this wrong. They got turned around because of fog. They flew off course to the nearest available airport, hit a flock of birds in the clouds, and that was the end of that plane. And everything else just played out as we, have been told so far. The communication system was damaged after, the explosion, whatever. But if there was another explanation for it, I think it's most likely one side or the other misidentified it as an enemy aircraft and either sent up a drone, sent up an air defense system missile, and blew it up by mistake. And maybe we might not ever know about that because it's not like these 2 sides are particularly forthcoming about.
I think the Kremlin would hopefully say it was an accident if it was them, or same vice versa, Ukraine or something else. because I think it's important to know if anybody's ever going to fly there again. Like, I'm never flying there now. I'm going to die. And,
Are
like,
you planning on going to Chechnya and Kazakhstan anytime
I
soon?
would like to go to Russia. My family's from Russia, so I'd like to go there someday.
I was just Googling as you're talking, and I came across an article from Harvard University Davis Center for Russian and Eurasian Studies from April 2024, and it says one winner of Russia's war against Ukraine is Azerbaijan. It does seem like it's far off from the conflict, but it could be. I mean, if it's deliberate sabotage to try to drag a country in or to penalize a country that might be allying itself with different forces. But I presume the black box is going to have some detailed pilot firsthand account of what happened prior to the crash.
Does an investigation into a black box, does that normally take like 30 days, or does that usually take a long time?
If you locate it, then they have to
They found
look.
Depends on how politically advantageous the contents of that box might be. Because I'm the 9/11 black boxes for sure. This is questionable information that the black boxes were damaged, but the paper passports survived. But that's a whole other separate problem.
Another kind of worms.
I appreciate you guys exploring.
Thank you, Kelly.
I'm glad that we've determined it was most likely an accident. That makes me feel better, even though I feel horrible for those people. Our final presentation today is presented by lovely Humberto, and it is a recap of 2024. Hit it.
All right, we're gonna go rapid fire on this, and this is very important to do recaps every year because you guys know memory holes are real, and people try to hide information and make people forget about things. So we're gonna start with January. All right, Japan started with on shaky grounds for the year 2024 with a huge earthquake. It was 7.4, and that happened on New Year's Day. That's the next day. So I don't know if you guys remember it. It was a slow, month for news. Then we go to a slower month for news. On February, we saw all the memes from the Willy Wonka experience in Glasgow. Conrad, you remember that?
Yeah, of course. Who could forget the chain smoking Oompa Loompas that went viral? And for anybody who might have forgotten about this was advertised, I believe it was in the UK, of an immersive walkthrough of the Willy Wonka experience. Everybody should have known something was up when every picture and advertisement for this was completely AI generated. There was not a single real image involved in this ahead of time. People showed up with their kids. They went through this weird abandoned warehouse of things that
was the saddest thing.
Like an afternoon. The Oompa Loompa was a girl who looked like she, smokes 3 packs a day. They also invented this weird villain. I can't even remember the name, but it was this figure in a black robe and a silver mask that would emerge out of the walls and scare people. Which one?
Oh, sorry. Nope, that's Squid Games.
Yeah.
All right.
Somebody look it up. It's the most insane thing, but hold on. Before you move out of February, Humberto, the other huge thing that most people forget happened this year because it's been such an eventful year is the Tucker Carlson interview with Vladimir Putin.
Oh, wow. I almost forgot about that. That was huge.
Amount of
It's called The Unknown.
Yes, The Unknown over at the terrible Willy Wonka experience. But
well, this is a good segue to March because March saw President Vladimir Putin reelected by a landslide. Also during March, Sweden joined NATO. Let's move on to April. April, we all look like fools. This was the most underwhelming thing I ever experienced. It was terrible. Like everyone's, total eclipse. Everyone get your stupid glasses, walk outside, and you got everyone staring at the sun. It was just like underwhelming. I don't know. How do you feel about it, Viva? Do you partake on it?
I did not partake in it because I wasn't interested in getting involved in the group think to that element. Like everyone's going to go into a direct line under this and like book hotels and stare up at the sky. My brother did it, one of my brothers, and it was actually totally cool in that it became dark and then it became light again. But the idea that I'm going to go sit in traffic with a bunch of people, some of whom think the world is coming as a result of this bona fide, thoughts of cataclysm. No, I from a scientific perspective, very interesting. Do you guys understand why we have solar eclipses? Like, if you want to pretend that there's not some intelligent design behind the world in which we live, why the moon and the sun overlap like that? Because based on their respective sizes and distances from the Earth, they're roughly the same size that they overlap in the cosmos. So of all the millions of planets and spaces out there, the sun and the moon are respectively of size and distance from Earth that they align to do something like that to freak the ever-loving hell out of people. If you don't think that's God playing a joke on people.
So magical. It's great.
Amazing. I love that twist.
Crazy how that worked. And I remember I wrote something on Twitter when it happened, because a bunch of big accounts were like, "Oh, everybody looks like an idiot going out to look at the eclipse," and
That's what I thought.
I think I responded to something that Cat Turd wrote, where he was like, "Don't get distracted by the eclipse. There's all these other things going on." I'm like, I don't know, man. I think observing unique phenomenon in the rotation of the heavenly spheres set in motion by God himself is actually a reason to go outside for like 15 minutes on a work day. And we can get back to talking about GDP when we're done with that. But it was interesting. Of course, we didn't see it in Florida. We all went outside like morons, even though we all knew we weren't in the path of where it was visible. But we tried. We put in the effort.
All right, moving on to May. This month, Donald Trump was convicted of a felony. We already talked about it in the first segment. Total bunk, and I think this is gonna end up differently. I hope. Then we go to June. We had Julian Assange was released.
Oh yeah.
Big news. I don't know even how long he was in there for, but he agreed to plead guilty to the United States, allowing him to return to Australia. So I don't know how you guys feel about him, but I think this is a small W. Like, it's a win, for people that are doing, important stuff to make this world a more transparent place. What feel about? How do you feel about it, Brandon?
No, I love it. I think he's a hero, just like Edward Snowden. I knew that he was a hero when all my national security professors told us not to say that we like him because we won't be able to get a job if we say that. Same thing about Snowden. So that made me like him right away and no longer want to pursue a career in government.
All right, and now we get like the year, like after half of the year gets really intense. We have July. July saw President Biden dropping out of the race
That was
and
so
endorsing.
wow.
Yeah, and endorsing Kamala Harris. Then
You better not
we
skip
had-
over the most monumental event
Yeah.
of July. July
This year,
13th.
right?
The bullet that nearly changed.
Here we go.
I had to add. I cheated. I had to add two things to July. Yes, that there was a month that.
I mean, come on. I
Donald
don't know if you guys
Trump-
can see. I don't know if you guys can see my desk from my
I
camera
did,
shot, but
I saw it, Connor.
framed on my desk here.
Yeah.
This is the motivation for the year. One of the best shots of history.
or the worst, because they didn't kill him.
Depending on which side you're on. Because now you just made it.
Depending on what side I can't believe how all these people went out and celebrated. They're like, oh, like they should have gotten. Like we really saw how bad the left is when it came to this thing and how murderous they are. It was absolutely unbelievable.
It makes me sad
And-
that people think that way.
Oh, and the lies they spread right away. Like they didn't admit that Trump was shot for. Huh?
Yeah, they were
It
like
took them-
bullet shots. It was a firework.
Kelly, it took them 3 days to admit that Trump was actually shot. 3 days.
You
Like, you
remember
saw-
the CNN headline, Trump falls after noise. on
Mysterious
CNN.
noise, yeah.
And remember the whole narrative. There's still people out there to this day who maintain that he took a dive and then cut his ear with a hidden razor, like he's some WWE wrestler who's trying to make the stakes seem higher by bleeding. It's like the guy behind him was shot and killed. Corey Compton's father and a firefighter was killed.
And
What did you
aside from the Trump victory, there was something beautiful about this moment. Like I say the word shot because like shooting a running candidate, like that's not the America we want. So I think the whole thing is terrible and sad, talking about the state of America. But I think there's a lot of people that came out believing God after this. Because the thing is that like if it wasn't the hand of God, of him like just you moving his head like a quarter of an inch to one side, we'll have a whole different story. So I think overall, like, it was a positive thing. I don't know. Then we have August.
The series of events that were set in motion by that shot
Oh,
will probably echo for decades to come, because the shift that happened when that took place, it was undeniable that it set something very serious in motion.
yes.
Yeah, but it was still I'm against candidates getting shot. That's my take.
Amen.
Controversial
Slightly
take.
controversial take. Then we had in August, they declare Mpox a public health emergency by the WHO. And this picture, I took it from an article that it was hilarious. It was like how gay men saved America from Mpox. And if I don't have the article here, if you start reading about it, in that moment, I also realized how many like gay orgies go around. And the only thing that they did, I mean, allegedly, according to the article, is stop having like like huge massive gay orgies for like a month or so. So that was Mpox, and
Well, that's what
I
we
think
found
that
out
was-
about Mpox, is that all of a sudden, it's this big thing that turns out there's gay orgies and gay bathhouses that are
everywhere.
happening in record numbers, and it's a crisis that's going to start making the jump to. They're never going to address how it made the jump from gay orgies to allegedly straight people, but they're like, "Don't worry, it's going to happen." And then suddenly, children and dogs started getting it, and we never talked about it again.
All right, memory hold. Then we go to September, and Brazil tried to ban X. This was a crazy story. I think Elon did a good job playing ball with them, just enough, and it got overturned, so they can enjoy X back in Brazil. Then we go to October. 20 billion sent to Ukraine. There was the middle of the the most disastrous political campaign in history, like the Kamala Harris, Tim Walz campaign, and everything has seen anything like it. And the whole machine around them, they were just like trying to, I don't know, like it didn't help for them to send 20 billion to Ukraine, where we had one of the biggest migrant crises that we ever seen in the history of this country. Then we go to the best month of the year, November. A lot of things happen, especially Donald Trump becoming president. It was a tremendous campaign. Like he won the nomination against all odds. We never seen anything like it in American history. He got prosecuted. He got shot. The whole media apparatus, the whole celebrity Hollywood apparatus, the whole intelligentsia, everything was against this man, and he managed to come up on top. And I remember the first time we saw him coming to the building, he opened the door, and he was like, "The only way we'll win if it's too big to rig." Remember, Brandon?
Yep.
Like, he
it
did-
sure was.
yeah.
It was too big to rig, all right.
He didn't even say hello. That's the first thing he did when he opened the door.
He's like a machine, just going around saying the greatest hits.
Greatest hit all the time. So I can't wait for next year, because we're gonna get more Trump, and I just can't get enough Trump. And finally, in a very weird turn of events, they had Tour Girl, the rise and the fall of the Tour Girl. This was the biggest psyop of the year. Like, some random guy asked a silly question to like a southern twanged girl that she was an advocate of spitting on that thing. And she went to have her own podcast, to have her own crypto, and she this article. I think this came out yesterday. She finally broke the silence, because the last thing we heard from her around like the 18th of the month was like, "I'm going to bed," and yeah, she's done. There's a a class action lawsuit against her. So that was a year in review. Did I miss any stories from this year? Any big ones you guys want to?
Yeah, a ton. But
Yeah, I'd love to know your selection criteria of how Haktua Girls rug pull ended up being the biggest thing that happened in December.
What's the biggest thing?
There's a whole lineup of stuff. We took about half of
Syria being overthrown.
Yeah, downfall of the Syrian government, the
The drones.
The
That we
drones over New Jersey.
Yeah, Humberto's got his priorities. He's interested in the Hawk Tuah girl over the drones in Syria. Domestic over international. Although the drones are domestic.
Already City going bankrupt is bigger than Hawk Tuah girl.
And Trudeau, his downfall. That
Oh,
That
That's a good one.
hasn't happened yet. That hasn't happened yet. We got to wait for their Christmas break to be over.
well, unusual suspects. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I believe it's our final episode before the new year, or do we have one more?
I don't know.
I don't know how you could. December 27th, New Year's what, on Tuesday?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We will not be back until the new year.
We will see you all in the new year. Thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, share. I really, really am just so excited for our new audience, all these new stories, all these talents that we're having on. Viva, thank you for leading. Brandon, Humberto, Connor, you guys are my rocks. I'm so happy to have you here. Huge shout out to Vincent Oshana and Rob Gargiulo, our main hosts, for always entertaining us with their angry enthusiasm. And I'm just so grateful for you guys. So thanks for being here. And we will see you next year. Peace.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Rock on.
Everybody say take care of each other. Love each other.
Well, yeah.
Bye.